A Syrian rebel commander says his fighters have registered numerous government ceasefire violations, and he's warning they could lead to the collapse of the agreement. The government says rebels have fired mortar rounds, but the United Nations indicates that apart from a few violations, the fragile Syrian ceasefire is holding. Meantime, a large-scale government campaign against ISIL in central Syria continues. The army is struggling to reopen the main supply route to Aleppo, and this comes after ISIL cut the route nearly a week ago. Many Syrians say they hope the fragile ceasefire could be the first step toward an end to almost 5 years of war. But there's doubt about how long this peace will last, and CCTV's Francis Coe is following the story.
Yep, Susan, this is the first deal of its kind to be tried in Syria's 5-year civil war. A delicate ceasefire brokered by the U.S. and Russia appears to be holding, but there are weaknesses. It is only good for 2 weeks. The deal was not signed off by all rival parties in Syria, and it's technically a cessation of hostilities, which makes it less binding than a formal ceasefire. Looking ahead, if this fails, the issue over Plan B being mentioned by the United States is already proving contentious. Calm in the Syrian capital, Damascus. Hundreds of kilometers away in a town in the northeast, a peaceful day at the market. Hours after a ceasefire took effect, no signs of violence for now.
We're not under any illusions. There are plenty of reasons for skepticism.
In his weekly address, U.S. President Barack Obama talked about some of the challenges of the deal.
A lot of this is going to depend on whether the Syrian regime, Russia, and their allies live up to their commitments. The coming hours and days will be critical, and the world is watching.
The U.S. and Russia agreed to the terms of the deal for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government and armed opposition groups. But that cooperation between Washington and Moscow may not transition if the truce collapses. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry told lawmakers recently that Syria could get a lot uglier and said the U.S. could move toward a Plan B.
The alternative is that the war gets worse, that Syria might be totally destroyed, not able to be put back together again.
Kerry has not given any specifics of what Plan B could be, but one option is a partition of Syria, carving out a section outside the control of Assad's government. Moscow has long rejected the idea of ousting Assad, saying it should be left to the Syrian people to decide on any political transition. Other options may include stepping up U.S. special forces on the ground to support moderate opposition forces, or a no-fly zone to protect those displaced. All these possibilities rejected recently by Moscow.
Of course, there should not be other ambiguous talks in the U.S.-led coalition of some kind of Plan B for preparations for a ground operation or the creation of buffer zones with closed airspace. Those have long been acknowledged as absolutely unacceptable.
Now, whether any Plan B will take effect will depend, of course, on whether this ceasefire continues to hold and how Syria's parliamentary elections will take shape on April 13th. Kerry has warned if Assad is not serious about a real transitional government process, the U.S. would consider those Plan B options. Clearly, no easy solutions to this war, and a recent report says that 470,000 people have been killed there, just a staggering number.
It is, and so many more displaced.
Absolutely.
Francis Coe, thank you for that.